She never imagined that something as simple as laughter could unravel her world in an instant. What began as mere taunts would soon escalate into a confrontation that would test the will of a quiet man, one who refused to yield. This was not just another day. Before we delve into this gripping tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Prepare yourself for an emotional storm. The sun dipped low over the horizon, drenching the land in a molten amber glow. The air lay thick and stifling, a suffocating weight under the relentless grip of summer. At a weathered gas station on the outskirts of Ashfield, Jenna Harper, just 18 but already tempered by the hardships of farm life, brushed damp strands of hair from her face as she wrestled with heavy sacks of feed from the back of her father's old truck. Beside her stood Luke Harper, a man whose hands bore the deep etchings of labor and time. They had tended their family farm together for as long as she could remember, bound by the sweat of their efforts and the quiet pride of those who worked the land. Ashfield was a quiet town, a place where time moved at its own unhurried pace, where everyone knew each other's name. But today something felt different. A gnawing unease crept into Jenna's chest, whispering warnings she couldn't quite put into words. Then she heard it, the distant rumble of engines. A low, ominous growl rolled across the open road, vibrating through the earth beneath her boots. The sound swelled, growing sharper, more distinct, until suddenly they appeared. Motorcycles tearing down the asphalt like a gathering storm. Jenna's stomach clenched. The iron fangs. She had heard their name before, spoken in hushed, wary tones by townsfolk who feared the lawlessness they brought wherever they rode. They weren't just bikers. They were a force of destruction, a harbinger of chaos that left towns rattled in their wake. Never before had they set foot in Ashfield. Not until now. The gang pulled into the gas station, their motorcycles snarling like wild beasts as they lined up in a menacing row. The contrast was jarring, this brutal intrusion of noise and raw aggression against the sleepy silence of Ashfield. Leading the pack was Jack Fury Daniels, a man whose reputation spoke louder than any introduction ever could. He carried himself like a king of the underworld, draped in an aura of unchecked dominance. His dark sunglasses mirrored the fading sun, concealing whatever lay behind them, but his smirk, sharp, knowing, predatory, spoke volumes. Tattoos slithered up his arms and neck like whispers of past sins. Jenna willed herself to keep working, to ignore their presence, to pretend she hadn't noticed the shift in the air. But then his gaze found her. A slow, deliberate grin spread across his face, stretching into something dangerous. Well, well, Fury's voice sliced through the thick air, loud enough for everyone to hear. Look at this little country girl. Laughter erupted from the gang, a chorus of mockery that wrapped around her like barbed wire. Jenna's face burned, a flush of heat rising up her neck, but she held firm. Her fingers curled tightly around the sack of feed, her knuckles whitening. A part of her wanted to shrink away. Another part wanted to meet his gaze, to show him that Ashfield was not as fragile as he might believe. But she knew one thing for certain. This day had just taken a dangerous turn. She refused to acknowledge them, determined to shut out their cruel taunts. But Jack Fury wasn't one to be ignored. "What's a pretty thing like you doing in a place like this?" he jeered, stepping closer, his voice dripping with mockery as he looked for a reaction. Jenna's stomach twisted into knots, but she held her ground, refusing to meet his gaze. Behind her, her father, Luke, was still focused on the gas pump, his back to the scene, but Jenna could feel the tension radiating off him. Luke Harper wasn't just a man of muscle. He was a man who had the uncanny ability to sense trouble before it fully manifested. His stillness only made the situation more intense, like a predator poised for action. The bikers closed in around her like a pack of wolves, their voices growing louder, their remarks more crude and threatening. One of them, a towering figure with a deep scar cutting through his cheek, leaned in too close for comfort, his grin twisted and dark. "You sure you're not bored around here, sweetheart?" he sneered. "I could show you a real good time." Jenna's hands trembled with the effort to stay composed, but she forced herself to remain motionless. She knew her father wouldn't step in unless things went too far. He wasn't the type to react rashly, but the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Suddenly, a voice cut through the growing tension, sharp and unwavering, like a blade slicing through thick fog. "Leave her alone." Luke had turned, his eyes now dark with a quiet fury. His feet moved deliberately as he closed the distance between himself and the gang. Standing tall, he positioned himself between Jenna and the bikers, his mere presence commanding attention. The raucous laughter from the gang faltered as they took in the man who stood before them, a figure whose calmness was far more formidable than any shout could ever be. "Who's this?" Fury scoffed, his earlier smirk returning with a mocking lilt. "You gonna protect your little girl, old man?" Luke didn't rise to the bait. His voice, though steady and almost silent, rang with authority. "Leave her alone," he repeated, his gaze unwavering. Fury's smirk twisted into something darker. "Or what? You think you can take us on, Grandpa?" He taunted, his voice dripping with contempt. The biker's laughter echoed, but this time, the sound wasn't as confident. It was tinged with doubt. They could see something in Luke's stance, something that made them hesitate. What they didn't know was that Luke Harper wasn't just a farmer. He wasn't just a man hardened by years of physical labor. He was a retired Marine. He had faced battles far more dangerous than anything these bikers could offer. "I don't think," Luke said, his voice colder than the autumn wind. The words hung in the air, pregnant with the threat of what was to come. Then, without warning, Fury lunged at him, a desperate attempt to assert dominance. But Luke was faster. Years of training and discipline kicked in as Luke sidestepped the attack with fluid precision. He grabbed Fury's arm in a vice-like grip, twisting it with the kind of practiced force that only comes from years of military combat. Fury cried out, his earlier bravado crumbling in the face of Luke's controlled strength. The other bikers moved to join the fight, but Luke was ready. One by one, he disarmed and subdued them. Each movement was deliberate, efficient, and merciless. This wasn't just a brawl. This was a demonstration of cold, practiced discipline. Within moments, the gang lay sprawled on the ground, groaning in pain and shock. Jenna stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest, her fear replaced with awe. She had always known her father was strong, but what she was witnessing now was something entirely different. This wasn't just raw strength. This was control. This was purpose. This was a man who had long ago learned the power of restraint and resolve. When the last biker staggered to his feet, Luke stepped back, his eyes sweeping over the defeated gang. "You've got two choices," Luke's voice was steady, but carried an undeniable weight. "Get on your bikes and leave, or stay and regret it." Fury, clutching his arm and seething with frustration, glared at Luke but didn't speak. He waved his gang off, signaling them to retreat. Slowly, one by one, the bikers mounted their motorcycles, their earlier arrogance now replaced by a heavy silence. As the sound of their engines faded into the distance, Jenna exhaled, her hands still trembling. Luke turned to her, his expression softening as he approached. "You okay, kiddo?" His voice was gentle now, a stark contrast to the tension moments before. Jenna nodded, her voice shaky but steady. "Yeah, Dad, I'm okay." For the first time, she truly understood the depth of her father's strength. It wasn't just about physical power. It was about standing firm in the face of fear. It was about protecting the ones you loved without hesitation or doubt. It was about keeping your composure when everything around you threatened to break apart. As they stood side by side, the weight of the moment settled in. Jenna knew this memory would stay with her forever. The story of that day spread quickly throughout Ashfield. Luke Harper became more than just a local farmer. He became a legend, a symbol of quiet strength, resilience, and unwavering resolve. But for Jenna, the lesson was deeper than just the defeat of the bikers. She had seen her father's strength, not just in his actions, but in the calm he maintained, in the way he refused to let fear or anger control him. Weeks later, the Iron Fangs returned to Ashfield, but this time, it wasn't for revenge. It was for redemption. Fury and his gang approached the gas station, heads lowered in an uncharacteristic show of humility. Fury stepped forward, extending a hand. "I'm sorry for what we did," he said, his voice softer than Jenna had ever imagined it could be. "We were out of line." Luke studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Apologies mean nothing if you don't change," he replied, his words measured and wise. "Respect is earned, not demanded." Fury nodded, the weight of Luke's words sinking in. The gang turned and left without a word. Jenna watched them go, feeling a deep sense of closure. Her father hadn't just protected her that day. He had taught her the value of strength tempered with compassion. What do you think of Luke's quiet strength in Jenna's journey? How does this story of courage and respect resonate with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more stories that inspire, challenge, and move you. Together, let's celebrate the power of resilience and the lessons that shape us all.